My name is Ali Jerkovich. I am a Vulnerable Populations Program Specialist here at King County with the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. And I am the Program Manager for this RFP. Yeah, maybe we'll start with our gentleman in the room.
All right, my name is Matt Aspen. I'm with 501 Commons.
Thanks, Matt. That's great. Folks on the phone want to introduce themselves?
Hi.
Sure, I'm Terry Kazuki with 501 Commons.
And this is Piper and Veronica Smith as well, and we are from Data to Insight.
Oh, hold on. That might be it.
This is Devin. I'm also working with Piper and Veronica.
Sorry, apologies to folks on the phone. We didn't have the volume turned up. Would you mind introducing yourselves one more time for our team?
Sure, this is Kerry Kazuki. I'm with 501 Commons.
Thank you, Kerry.
This is Piper and Veronica Smith and also Devin, and we are at Data to Insight.
And this is Mailing Ellis. I'm with Mailing Ellis Consulting.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here today. We always want to start all of our meetings by acknowledging that we are on Native land, that this is the traditional and unceded territory of the Duwamish Nation and the Coastal Salish peoples. It is not something we've always been great about doing, and our team is trying to make intentional efforts to do that at all of our meetings, so I just want to start that. I'd also like to introduce my King County colleagues in the room.
Hi, my name is Nathan Lemons, and I'm the Vulnerable Populations Team Lead.
Hey everybody, this is Adam Schmidt, Community Liaison with the Veterans, Seniors, Human Services Levy.
Great, thanks so much. And just a reminder that this bidders conference from today will be posted on our website. There will be information and a link at the end of the presentation today. And if you have any other questions, the process is to go through our Zoom grants portal. You can also email me directly. You will receive a generic email back that says we cannot speak to you during open procurement individually. We will respond to your questions via Zoom grants. And that includes any of the questions that were asked here today. So we are just going to talk briefly about what we're going to be covering today. We'll talk a little bit about what is the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. That's probably a helpful baseline. We will be talking about the strategy of SS4C, the Countywide Non-Profit Wage Survey. We will do an overview of the RFP itself, and then we will be going quickly through how to apply on Zoom grants, and then there will be some time at the end for question and answers. So first we're going to start with a little bit about what is the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, or VSHSL. The Veteran Senior Human Services Levy, which I'll just refer to as the levy for brevity, was passed in King County voters in 2017. It is a 6-year property tax levy, and it is intended to be 2018 to 2023. We are now rolling out our first RFPs here for the year 2019. The implementation plan was passed itself in 2018. There are 3 populations. My team is the Vulnerable Populations Unit. There are seniors and their caregivers and veterans. And there are 5 result areas for each of those 3 priority populations. And we will talk a little bit about this strategy area and where this specific investment lands. But those 5 result areas are housing stability, financial stability, social engagement, healthy living, and system access and improvement. The guiding principles of the levy follow some of these philosophies. On the right, you'll see combined arms, communities of service, and fostering belonging. And the overarching goals are connections, belonging, and the idea that what can only the VSHSL do. And so looking at this as a new funding stream and thinking about ways we creatively as a team can support organizations and communities that have not traditionally had access to funding, and to do things with this levy that other funding sources have not. And that leads me to one of our priorities as King County is toward equity and social justice. Our overarching goal is to ensure that all people, regardless of who they are and where they live, have the opportunity to thrive with full and equal access to opportunities, power, and resources. And equity and social justice is really key to the work of the levy, and it's embedded in principles throughout all of the RFPs, this one included. You will note that there are sections of the RFP that actually speak specifically to what we mean when we say equity and social justice. In the application itself, under narrative questions, equity and social justice is also called out specifically as a priority for our team. So this strategy area, also called SS4C, has the same name as the RFP, which is the Countywide Non-Profit Wage Survey. Of those 5 result areas that we mentioned earlier, this falls under strategies to promote service system access and improvement. And this specific section that this investment falls under is Cultivate an Effective Levy Community. So find the ways that we as levy providers and across community can create that access and improvement and create connections. And then this specific investment is SS4C, Countywide Nonprofit Wage Survey. And if you are in the room, you have a copy of the actual investment as laid out in the implementation plan. That information can also be found on the levy funding page, which you will get a link to at the end if you're curious to see what it says specifically. However, we do have here what the strategy is, what the concept and the rationale are for the SS4C Countywide Nonprofit Wage Survey, and these are directly pulled from the implementation plan on page 140. The intent is to administer and update a King County nonprofit wage survey that provides nonprofit entities with data, and with data at no cost to providers. And the rationale is that performance measurement and analysis from the former VSHSL actually identified a pattern that most programs responded to our team in saying that they had underperformance and had high rates of staff turnover, and had talked about wage as being a marker of why that might be, which is how we came to do this actual investment. So about the RFP itself, there are also copies of that on Zoom grants. If you're in the room, you will also have a copy of it on hand. I'm going to give a really high-level overview of what the RFP itself says. I encourage folks to read it thoroughly. All of those materials, including ones from today, will also be uploaded onto Zoom grants, where you will be able to access those materials and read through things more comprehensively. The RFP's scope of work is to have the survey administered 2 times during the course of the levy, 2019 to 2023. The intent is to have the first survey run in 2020, and then again in 2022 and or every other year for all levy-funded programs. The broad strokes for scope of work are to develop and conduct a nonprofit wage and compensation survey, and we will talk a bit about what those actual survey components are, to analyze that survey's results and produce a report for our team as well as the county programs, and to share those results, again, free of cost to the provider community. So there are 3 tiers of survey components. We're going to start with the ones that are at a minimum, and all of these will be identified in partnership with King County staff. So there is that caveat attached to the second page here. So it shall include at a minimum de-identified employee level demographics such as race, ethnicity, age, gender, education, certifications, and licensure of the employees, the years of experience in the field of employees, their position classification, their hours, including full-time and part-time classifications, agency-level data such as organization size and budget, and the sector and or type of service that that agency provides, wage or salary data, and other compensation information, which is as determined in partnership with King County staff. The other 2 tiers, the survey may also include additional data points, such as the length of time the employee has both been with that agency specifically and in their current role, and the flexibility of their work schedules, the case or workload of employees. And the 3rd tier is in collaboration with King County. The developed survey could also include the zip code of the organization and the zip code of where the employee lives, and other qualitative data about employees' experiences. So the actual funding for the RFP is $211,000 for the program period of October 1st to December 31st, and those dates are subject to change, but it is our best guess and our best intention. And the 2021 to 2023 funding is contingent on approval by the County Council budget and continued partnerships and provision of data on program performance and implementation. And in this table, you will see this is pulled from the implementation plan itself from section SS4C, and it shows that this is intended to be across all of our funded programs, and so there are investments from each of those populations, including my team, the Vulnerable Populations Unit. Eligibility. Applications meeting the requirements of the RFP will be accepted from any legally constituted entities that meet the following 2 conditions: to have a current Washington State business license and agree that all information, records, and data collected in connection with this RFP shall be protected from unauthorized disclosure in accordance with applicable state and federal law. And I also want to note that in accordance with our equity and social justice goals as a county, we do have an emphasis on applications that are nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, tribes and tribal organizations, and public or governmental agencies serving communities in King County. And you will see that language across the majority of our RFPs. So as far as contract requirements, I'm just going to touch on the main one, which is evaluation. And we have anticipated core performance measures. Again, these are subject to change and will be built in partnership with our staff. And those might be how many VSHSL funded providers were reached and anticipated and participated in this survey. How well was the survey developed and administered to be accessible to funded providers? And we don't just mean accessible by being able to access it, but accessible as in user-friendly. And how are VSHSL funded providers better off as a result of the collected and shared data? And this follows our results-based accountability guidelines for how we are doing performance measurement across the levy as well. The timeline for this investment is the RFP was released on June 5th. Today is June 14th, the bidders conference. The final day to submit questions in Zoom grants. So the final day to send me a note with a question, submit a question in Zoom grants is a week before the RFP closes. Any questions after that will not be received and posted on the FAQ section of the Zoom grants portal, which is under the library tab. And then full responses are due on July 8th. That's a Monday. Responses are reviewed and rated in August. We will be convening a review panel, and I'll touch on that here in a moment. Interview, if necessary, will be in August. The intent is to notify awardees of our decisions in September, and then the anticipated contract start date will be in October. So to apply, the final proposals need to be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on July 8th. Complete submittals will include a response to the summary questions, which are not scored, but you will see them in Zoom grants. They are general demographic information about your agency and who to contact. And then the response to narrative questions, which are scored, and the budget template, which you will need to upload, and that is also scored. And there is a template that sits in Zoom grants under the budget tab. Rating criteria. So you can see the full table of rating criteria fleshed out in the RFP itself. But a general overview is these categories are how we will be scoring under program description, and these follow the narrative questions that we ask and how those are scored. So program description, capacity and experience, partnerships and collaboration, equity and social justice, budget and fiscal, and data collection and evaluation. And we will be facilitating a review panel that will be made up of King County employees, likely on our team, community members, and subject matter experts. Zoom grants. All RFP materials are posted on Zoom grants. You can see the library tab if there are any documents that you are curious about. Check regularly for updates. When we receive questions, we will do our best effort to respond to them as reasonably fast as possible. And if you have opened an application, you will get a notification that those have been posted, but check regularly to make sure that your questions have been answered. All applications must be filled out and submitted via Zoom Grants. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, there is a help button on Zoom Grants where you can contact them directly. They're very responsive. Questions today and those submitted in writing after today will be posted to Zoom Grants again under the library tab. And then you can see the actual link to the Zoom Grants RFP below in the body of this. Okay, that was a lot of information very quickly. Do you have any questions? This is my contact information if you have any questions moving forward. And again, you can contact through the contact admin in the Zoom Grants portal. Any questions from folks on the phone?
I actually do have a question.
Could you say your name when you...
Sure. This is Mei Ling. The question that I actually have is regarding the reporting. Do you, for the two different reports that you specified, one for King County and then one for providers, is that an individual report for each of the providers? Because there are quite a good amount of providers that you have, or is that an aggregated report?
So they will not be individual reports to providers. It will be an aggregate report that we will decide as a team how that will be fleshed out and disseminated, but it will be available to all funded entities countywide.
Great.
Allison, this is Carrie Kazuki at 501 Commons. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, Carrie.
Hi. So one question I have about the data and its availability to nonprofits in King County, where do you expect and in what form do you expect to mount that data? And then a secondary question to that is, in what form does that need to be delivered to King County?
So if I understand your question, it's in what form will you be providing the data to us and also to the community?
Yeah, how, I didn't see in the RFP how the community would be able to search the data. I mean, are you intending to mount that on the county website, or is that something that you would want the successful bidder to mount on their website to make it accessible? What do you envision?
So what's written in the RFP is what we're envisioning. I think that the intent is to work in collaboration with someone, but we want to receive whatever proposal you have to offer that will respond directly to what's outlined in the RFP. If it's not specifically called out, then we're interested in what you have to offer for this specific investment. And I know that's a vague answer, and I can try and flesh it out more, but the intent is tell us what you think would be successful.
Okay. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a follow-on question to that.
Yeah.
So if this is going to be searchable on the web, would King County entertain the idea, or would the county have a preference to having nonprofits access that from the King County website?
That is a great question. I do not have an answer to at this time, but I will follow up with our team and leadership and post that one to Zoom Grants. That's a great question. Thank you.
Okay. And then another, I guess I just have another question that came up, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I guess my question is there a preference to allow nonprofits to search the database in a dynamic search, with a dynamic search method rather than a static search method, such as a PDF report?
So what we call out in the RFP is as specific as we are being. The intent is for it to be accessible and useful to nonprofit agencies. And so we are interested in hearing from bidders what that might look like and what might be the best option.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. Anybody else?
This is Maylin Alice. From what I was able to find, or actually, can you tell me how many providers you're looking at that would be covered here? Do you have a sense?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have a good sense of that at this time. It's too early for us to be able to answer. The intent is to be for all levy-funded providers, and we have not contracted out enough of our RFP investments enough to have a succinct answer. That's a great question though, and I will follow up with our team and see if we have an estimate, and I can post that one as well. There are 73 investments roughly in the levy itself that intend to be contracted out between 2019 to 2021. That is about as specific as we can be at this time.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, great question. Thanks so much.
This is Mailing Alice. I have another question for you.
Yep.
In the RFP, it does allude to the fact that there was some focus groups that occurred before the RFP was written. If somebody once you accept whomever is going to be implementing the RFP and this, will they have access to that information?
That is a wonderful question. Our intent is to be as collaborative and iterative as possible with the awarded entity. And that will include any information we have about our intent behind it, what the goals are of it, and including how those were formed.
And then the other question that I have, this is Mailing Alice again, is has this been done before in King County? And if so, where can we find prior reports regarding that?
That is a wonderful question. The only entity that I am aware of, and I will follow up with more detail about this, is that United Way of King County used to do a wage survey that was handed over and contracted out in 2013 to a company called Archbright, formerly known as Washington Employees. Information about that wage survey, which again is the only one I am currently aware of, but I will do some research to see if there's more helpful information. That information can be found on United Way of King County's website about where to access that information and who to contact.
Great, thanks, I found that. Oh, this is Mailing Alice again. So the documents provided in person, you said they will be uploaded online shortly after this webinar?
So the documents provided in person are the PowerPoint that you are seeing on Skype. You do not have access to it currently. The recording of this bidders conference, including that PowerPoint itself, will be uploaded under the VSHSL funding page, as well as on the Zoom Grants portal as a video attachment. And the RFP itself is already up there on Zoom Grants, and the final document is from the implementation plan itself, which again you can find on the VSHSL funding page. All right. Well, I really appreciate you all taking the time to be with us today. Happy Friday. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any other questions. And I look forward to reading your proposals.